Hey, good day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in our Trusted Voices webinar today. My name is Felix McGowan, Director of Ameren Critical Infrastructure here at Ameren. For the folks who might not know it, Ameren is the only 100% tribally owned insurance company in the United States. Ameren offers a comprehensive line of affordable insurance products, and Ameren Critical Infrastructure provides service to Indian countries such as project management, grant writing, and digital equity planning, to name a few. Our risk control provides risk management consultation resources, education, and training at no charge to our members and customers. Today, we're talking about developing and implementing emergency action plans for your tribe, tribal businesses, or even community organizations. I'd like to introduce Natua Garcia. He's a proud member of the Santa Ana Pueblo located here in New Mexico. He has been part of the risk control team for the past 7 years. As a member of the team, Natua provides safety training and inspections for Ameren members and clients. He is doing his part to ensure Indian country is safe and prepared in the event of an emergency. Some of the safety training and risk control team activities include first aid CPR, defensive driving, workplace violence training, active shooter, and office ergonomics, to name just a few. Natua provides a unique perspective from past working experience and living in the Santa Ana Pueblo. So, without further ado, Natua, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Felix. Appreciate it. So, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Today, we're going to take a look at emergency action plans, emergency preparedness. So, lights, emergency action, developing and implementing emergency action plans in our tribal communities. In the comments, I will be asking, certain questions, and feel free to provide yes, no answers in the comments there. It's just for me. There's not any thumb ups or claps or anything like that. So we'll just go yes or no's in the comments. Our session objectives: we'll be able to recognize the types of workplace disasters we might face, understand the requirements of our emergency response plan, satisfy employee training requirements, and carry out emergency response duties effectively. Our session outline: we're going to talk about the types of workplace disasters we might face, OSHA requirements, emergency response plan, employee training, evacuation procedures, and emergency management and security. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the type of workplace disasters. Obvious, our big one: fires, explosions. And then now, with the changing of temperatures and climates and global warming, we're having a lot more natural disasters. All the way up on our West Coast, we have, natural wildfires, we have wind and hail disasters. And we're also starting to get, the natural disasters are becoming a lot more frequent and a lot more powerful. So how do we plan for those disasters, right? We can't tell the tornado to please change its course. We have to prepare and plan. We can't tell the fire, hey, just go to the left. We have to have a plan in place. We have to make sure we can provide, that plan at adequate and reasonable time. The different types of workplace disasters continued. We have toxic chemical releases. With our growing and changing tribes, we're starting to, have more claims related to chemical releases, improperly stored chemicals, and then also working in workplace violence. How do we plan for workplace violence disaster? Harassment, bullying, all the way up into the point of an active shooter emergency. Do we have a lockdown plan? Do we have a lockdown plan in place? Terrorism. Maybe we're working with casinos, or our tribe has a big venue, and we get a bomb threat called, or an act of terrorism in that area. What do our plans set in place? Is that something we thought about? Is that something we even, planned for? So just to, bring it to our attention there, the types of workplace disasters. Our OSHA requirements. I know, especially, working on the tribe, being sovereign, we don't really have to, be held to those OSHA standards, as rigorous as, let's say, a company operating in, Bernalillo or Albuquerque, for example, not the tribe, they have OSHA requirements. But for us, using those OSHA requirements, those OSHA standards are a good stepping stone to make sure that, our plans are in place. They're able to be part of, the OSHA standard. So the alarm systems, reporting systems, firefighting equipment, emergency response plans, and employee training. The alarm systems there, we've got to make sure ADA compliance, they have different types of sounds. Is there lights flashing? Is there vibrations? What do our reporting systems look like? If we have a employee or a staff that's less than 10, employees for that working year, then the reporting systems are a little bit different with those OSHA reporting logs. Firefighting equipment, we'll talk about it later, but something as simple as a portable fire extinguisher. Are those up to code? Is our sprinkler systems, are those getting checked? What about our emergency response plans? Are those plans in place? Is everybody aware of that information? When we talk about employee training, where we tend to overlook are the employees that have been there, that have some tenure, right? Maybe 5, 6, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. A lot might change in that time, right? We might have a new exit out of the building. We might have taken down that tree that provided the shade, that was a meetup place. So we really stress the importance of employee training. Refreshers, really big one. Something as simple as, learning how to use the fire extinguisher, the pass system. Employee training takes 15 minutes. We can do that in-house, maybe once a month or once a quarter, but employee training is really, really important for understanding the plan, right? Especially for emergency action. The alarm systems, depending on the types of alarms, let's say we have a fire alarm, right? We need to know the different sounds. If it's a fire alarm, if it's a tornado, alarm, if it's the alarm that we're going to use to go into lockdown, we need to know the different sounds of those alarms. We need to know the location of the alarms. And the big one we have is the activation of the alarms, right? Not every alarm is activated the same way, but you probably take a look around our building and look at the fire alarms. Some of them have a metal handle saying break the glass and pull down the lever. That's a little intimidating, right? An emergency situation. How hard do we hit the glass? Are you sure we have to hit the glass? Do we pull it this way? Maybe that smoke is not growing as much as we anticipate. Do we still pull the alarm? Yes, we have to activate those alarms. So knowing how to activate the alarm is really crucial. Maintenance and inspection of the alarm systems. Throughout my trips and through Native America to the tribes, different tribes, some of those alarm systems are disconnected, right? You'll have the wiring ends shown and they're not connected to anything. So please, we have to maintain and inspect the alarm systems, because if it is that one out of 1 million time and we need to pull that alarm and it's not connected to anything, why are we there? So please maintain and inspect all the alarm systems. It'll help in the long run. We have to be a lot more proactive than we are reactive. Firefighting equipment, fire extinguishers, and other firefighting equipment, like we talked about the sprinkler systems. But for those fire extinguishers, Class A and Class B, Class A fire extinguishers need to be 75 feet or less, so each employee has to have within, 75 feet. Class B is 50 feet. So just let's take a look when we go around our office, how far are the portable fire extinguishers, away from each other. And the other thing that we also tend to kind of overlook is they have to be mounted and they have to be up. They can't be on the ground, just because tripping hazard could kick it over, damage the bottle. Okay, so big one there. Firefighting equipment, annual inspections, and employee training. For those annual inspections, it is we need to get those fire extinguishers, fire alarm systems, fire suppression systems inspected annually, at least once a year. From from, the fire agency that you might have bought your extinguishers from, the fire company that you bought your extinguishers from, come out annual inspection every year. But this goes back to the employee training. We could have the learning how to use the fire extinguisher, once a quarter or at employee orientation. And when we have to renew that employee orientation, we can have that employee training. What to look for, right? Maybe our maintenance or our security who do, circle the building, who do go to, every part of the building or every part of the campus. Maybe we train them to look at and inspect, the fire extinguishers monthly. Here at Ameren, that is one of our jobs as risk control, is we go around our building and inspect the fire extinguishers monthly, do the monthly sign off, take a look at the canister. Is there any dents? Is there any dings? Is the gauge, is it on green? If it's on red, if it's not charged enough, if it's overcharged, is the hose, damaged, cracked? Is the security tamper, the plastic seal undone? Is the pin pulled? All these things that we're taking a look at, if we answered yes to any of those, then that fire extinguisher needs to be taken out of service. Just because they are on the edges of the walls, they are susceptible to a lot of bangs and bruises and, dings. So let's take a look at that. And sometimes not everything's perfect. We might be overcharged or not charged enough, and that also has to be taken out of service. So that's a good way that we could implement that employee training is, what to look for with the fire extinguishers. And so, this next slide here, real simple. I know we've all probably heard it, pass, right? What is pass? Well, we pull the pin, this will allow the brake to break the tamper seal, and that tamper seal is always going to be there. So like I said in the previous slide, if that tamper seal is not there, then that fire extinguisher has to be taken out of service, okay? So pull the pin, aim right. We want to aim at the base of the fire, squeeze, okay? And then sweep, right, side to side. So those are the 4 steps we're going to take. Pull the pin, aim, squeeze, and sweep. I know we tend to anticipate things we see on TV. And so fire extinguishers on TV, they have a lot of recoil, there's a lot of dramatic working there. But if we do use that fire extinguisher, you don't have a lot of recoil, all the pressure's in your hand, and it's really easy to sweep, squeeze and sweep and at the base of the fire. So that's my pull the pin, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Emergency response plan, emergency escape procedures and routes, emergency response assignments, and accounting for the personnel. The emergency escape procedures and routes, we all need to know exactly where we have to go in the event of fire. We need to have 2 points of exit out of our office or where we sit, our cubicle. And if the window is your emergency exit number 2, then we have to also prepare for that, right? We have to go outside, make sure that, hey, is there a large drop off? Is there some weeds behind there? Is there some sharp bushes, cactus, whatever it may be? We have to know exactly, how our routes are. We have to practice. Emergency response assignments, that goes along to that adage we hear. We have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. So we need to have a lot of Indians, right? We need to have a lot of people just waiting for the assignment, waiting, told what to be done. Hey, we have to leave the building immediately. Hey, we're going to our meeting spot behind the dumpster, or we're going to our meeting spot in the shade past the dumpster. Accounting for personnel, for me, especially with the amount of employees and the amount of activities in everybody's life, accounting for personnel could be challenging, right? How do we account for those personnel? How do we account for someone going to the dentist or someone having an emergency PTO day because a child is sick, right? So accounting for that personnel is really important, really key. If the managers, do we text? Do we have an email? Do we have an internal communication such as Teams, Skype? Okay, so accounting for that personnel really important. Emergency response plan, rescue and medical duties. who's going to be in charge of those rescue and medical duties. Take a look at our inventory of staff. How many of our staff are first aid CPR certified? How many, maybe EMTs do we have on staff? Do we have a fire department, a volunteer fire department, maybe EMS on our tribe? What are those duties? What are the numbers for that department? Emergency reporting procedures and information resources. The only reason why there might be two different numbers is like Felix mentioned at the beginning of the meeting or the beginning of the webinar. I'm from Santa Ana Pueblo, and we're about 10 minutes away from a bigger town that has EMS, fire department, and even at that, if we call 911, it gets dispatched to the county dispatch, and then it finally makes its way to, the tribal dispatch. But if it's a tribal emergency, there is a specific number for the tribal police department. So if that's something one of your tribes is kind of faced with, let's have that number as well in our emergency response information. And that should be on the first page of your emergency response plan. It's contact information, 911, and who to call, who's in charge. Okay, basic employee training, review the emergency response plan, types of potential emergencies, evacuation plans, alarm systems, reporting procedures, and shutdown procedures. We have to constantly review the emergency response plan because it's going to change. Our employees are going to also change with turnover and just maybe moving on to greater opportunities. So we have to update. How many times, and maybe some of us could look at our emergency response plan and look at that first page and say, hey, that guy's no longer, here with the company. He retired 3 years ago. Well, it would be a good idea to update the plan, right? Review the emergency response plans, forever changing. Types of potential emergencies, like we talked about. We're starting to get more hail, more wind, storms. We're starting to get a lot more, even we have to plan for it. Active shooter emergencies, domestic violence emergencies, workplace violence emergencies. So types of potential emergencies we have to plan for. Nothing is crazy, right? We always have to have a plan for it. The evacuation plans, which way are we going to leave? Something more on a personal note, if we're in our office, let's just do a quick scenario, right? If there's a fire at the door, which way am I going to go? Or if there's a fire behind me in the trash can, which way am I going to go? Maybe we're lucky and we have a fire extinguisher in our office or in the vicinity. Are we able to make it there to fight the fire? Is the flames too big? Right? And then our reporting procedures, who do we report to? Shutdown procedures, who's in charge of shutting down? Who's going to stay behind? Is there a special team? Is it going to be IT, a member of IT, a member of our safety service team? Is it going to be the executive director? Who's in charge of those shutdown procedures? If the executive director is gone, out of work, out of the office, out of the state, who's next to charge? We have to have at least 5 people in line so we don't run into that problem of, everybody's gone. Who is in charge, right? We have to have everything for all the emergency situations. Okay. Specialized training, employees with emergency operation assignments, employees with emergency shutdown responsibilities, evacuation wardens and alternates, employees with rescue and medical duties. Okay, and so like we talked about, is we have to be true to ourselves, right? Am I going to be able to function and do my job correctly in a high pressure emergency situation? Am I going to be able to be cool, calm, and collected? Because that's the other thing, right? Especially in an emergency situation. Am I going to be able to, provide care? Am I going to be able to, complete the task at hand? Emergency employees with emergency shutdown responsibilities, like we talked about, the employees that are going to be staying behind to shut down operations. What are those responsibilities? What do those look like? Do we have a backup generator? Okay, evacuation wardens and alternates. Who's going to be in charge of getting everybody out? That's a really important job. Oftentimes, especially if it is a fire drill, people might say, "Oh, it's just a drill. It's not a big deal." whatever, I'm not going to burn down, not. But it's that warden's responsibility and the alternate's responsibility to say, hey, this is a drill or this is a fire. We have to go. We have to evacuate. Okay. So, think about the person that you might see fit to be the warden, to get people out. Maybe someone has a strong voice, strong personality, strong in their convictions. I can say, no, we need to leave. I don't care. Get out, get out, get out. Okay. Employees with rescue and medical duties, we talked about it in the previous slide. First aid, CPR, the people that can handle that emergency response, especially with blood. I learned real quickly that, even your heroes, my dad specifically, went into shock as soon as he saw his own blood start spewing out of his hand. That's my father. He's the strongest guy I know. And so we need to take a really good look and say, who's going to be in charge of these rescue and medical duties? Okay. And if you fit that, and if you want to be that, well, then let's take that next step and say, hey, I'm in charge of the rescue and medical duties. I'll be able to do it. I'll be able to move on. I'll be able to smooth this fast, right? Employee training schedules. New employees, like we talked about, we need the annual refresher training. Whenever the plan is revised or amended, we need to have that training. Just because oftentimes we hear, oh, I didn't know the plan was changed. Oh, I had zero idea. Well, if we have that annual refresher training, or whenever the plan is revised or amended, we have our training, we have our updates, we have our debriefs, then that shouldn't be the excuse, correct? Think about a refresher training, maybe a 15-minute, a 7-minute toolbox talk to talk about the edits in the plan or the amendments in the plan. That could be a nice little way to talk about another safety topic that maybe we're having issues on. Maybe if it's in November, winter's coming up, we talk about slips, trips, and falls when addressing our, amendments in our plan, right? Okay. Employee training schedules. The other time, when new equipment, materials, or processes are introduced, when procedures are updated or revised, when drills show the employee performance must be improved. That's why drills are so important for us. We don't know our normals until, we've seen drill. I know we all say, because we're adults, we say, oh yeah, we could do that. We'll leave. We could listen to the fire alarm. We see the lights flashing. Well, why don't we leave the first time when we think it's a drill, right? So that just shows us, hey, we need to improve on getting out. We need to improve on evacuation. It shows us here. The first time we did it might have taken 30 minutes to get out everybody. Second time, 15 minutes. Third time, 10 minutes. Fourth time, 5 minutes. So that's how we show our improvement. The other time we would want employee training is anytime a new chemical is introduced to our closet. We need to have a training for employees that are coming in contact with that chemical. The safety data sheet's really important. It gives first aid information. What to do if spilled in your eyes, what to do in contact with your skin. So that's really important. Safety data sheets. Make sure all our employees that work with chemicals and hazardous materials know of the safety data sheets. Okay, emergency evacuation procedures, evacuation route maps, primary evacuation routes, and the alternative route we talked about. Think about our building now. Do we have an evacuation route map? Have we seen one? Maybe we saw, one coming into the elevator. But do we use those? Are they effective? What is our primary evacuation route? Do we have one? Amarin, our building is kind of separated into two sections, the south side and the north side of the building. The north side of the building, we do have an emergency exit double door. The door stays open all business hours. That's where, our primary exit is. The south side of the building, they have side entrances, side exits, emergency exits there. That's where they're going. The claims team has their own emergency exit. Underwriting has their own emergency exit. So what are our primary evacuation routes? So there's two primary evacuation routes for depending on what side of the building you're on, north side or south side, right? And what's our alternative routes? Is one of the routes going through the window, right? If the main door is closed and the flames are there, probably that's going to have to be alternative route. We have to practice that. Okay. We have to emergency evacuation procedures continued. We have appropriate behavior, evacuation of injured or disabled employees, and once again, accounting for the personnel. Here we have a picture of a lady in a wheelchair. Just really quick, in the event of a fire, we cannot use the elevators. We have to use the stairs. So with that being said, if by any chance we do have a second level and the stairs are needed, do we have our lady in the wheelchair on the second floor? It has to be put of our plan to make sure that that person's on the first floor in the event of an emergency, in the event of a fire. We cannot use the elevator. So first floor, she has access to leave the building all on the same floor there. So that's a big one there. Make sure that we don't have someone that needs the elevator on the third floor. We have them on the ground level. Accounting for personnel, really big. Once again, brought up a lot. How do we account for the personnel? How do we account for people's busy schedules? Is it using the cell phone? Is it getting on a group message? Please check in. Let me know if you're safe. Yes or no. Who's all out today? Okay. It's up to the individual team leaders. We're thinking about some company, kind of a medium size like Amarant here with a bunch of different teams. It'd be really impossible for, CEO Derek Waldo to know exactly where everybody is in an emergency situation. So that's where we have to fall on our team leaders, the leadership team here to know, hey, well, this individual team, claims team, we're all accounted for. Risk control, we're accounted for. ACI, we're accounted for. Okay. Emergency response assignments, emergency operations, shutdown responsibilities, rescue and medical response duties, firefighting duties. So our emergency operations, how are we going to work? What's our emergency operations? What is the most necessary operations that we need to operate, right? What are the teams that we need? If we have a skeleton crew, who's the most necessary? Those are emergency operations. Who's in charge of our shutdown responsibilities, like we talked about? Is it going to be someone that lives close to the tribe? Is it someone that lives on the tribe? Is it the executive director? Is it the security director? Who's in charge of those shutdown responsibilities? And make sure it's known. Okay. Rescue and medical response duties, make sure those are known. Okay. We don't want someone coming in from left field saying, oh, well, you can't handle blood, so I'm the guy to call. Hey, sir, I'm just following what's on the chain of command here. Okay. Firefighting duties. Is our tribe, do we have a fire department? Is it a volunteer fire department? Are we close to, a town like we are here, Bernalillo, 10 minutes away? Who's in charge of those firefighting duties? Okay, non-evacuation emergencies, know how to report the emergency, warn our coworkers, assist as directed, do not get in the way, follow that chain of command, and have the emergency communication. How to report the emergency. Let's say it's an active shooter and we have to lock down. Well, in that case, everybody's going to call 911, right? We're all going to call 911. Make sure we know the location of the shooters, the number of shooters, any description of the shooter. Excuse me. Warn our coworkers. Make sure that we warn them, have an internal communication, maybe a lockdown sound or announce over the intercom we're going into lockdown. Make sure we stress the importance of that lockdown, right? That's another thing we should practice is our lockdown for those non-evacuation emergencies. Even let's say our Oklahoma tribe's tornado is, how are we going to warn our coworkers? Do not get in the way, right? Oftentimes, hysterics, you'll be running around screaming, saying, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I think about my mom in that situation, right? Like, Mom, just sit down. I'll be here. We're going to get this done. Just relax. Okay. Just pray for us. So please do not get in the way, follow that chain of command and that emergency communication. If we do have emergency communication set up, let's utilize it, right? I know with the pandemic and the COVID pandemic, a lot of tribes were able to kind of establish emergency communication sent over text. Utilize that. Just the other day in Santa Ana, we had emergency communication for fertilizer spraying in Northfields and Ranchitos. So that was a pretty good emergency communication there. It said, please don't enter that area for 24 hours. Pesticides and herbicides in there could cause serious damage. So that area was off, shut off limits for that 24 hours. So those evacuation or emergency communication there. Security, preventing unauthorized access to vital records, information, and equipment, protecting important records and other documents. But the big thing on security, and we could try and we could practice, and when we're doing our walk arounds building, make sure and report anything out of the ordinary, right? Maybe a window that's cracked or that's open that doesn't lock, a door that doesn't lock, maybe a door that's handle's busted and not there. Let's report those. It's really important, especially for those non-evacuation situations. Let's say it is an active shooter, and our doors don't lock. Well, what good is that, right? We had a really unfortunate situation with an active shooter in Texas at the elementary school, where it was documented that the teacher asked multiple times for, her door to be replaced. She said, the door doesn't lock, it needs to be replaced. The door doesn't lock, it needs to be replaced. No one did anything about it until it was too late. The shooter was able to get in the classroom and, bad things happen. So please, 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 let's not overlook something that we might think right now as something as simple as a unlocked door or door that doesn't lock or, a doorknob that's not there. Let's replace it. Let's get it fixed, because the truth is we do not know if we're going to be faced with an active shooter emergency tomorrow or, in the next couple hours or right now, right? So please, 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 let's have our security up to par. Fire prevention, keep work areas clean, control flammable and combustible materials, no smoking rules. The big thing for the smoking, if we do have a smoking station, needs to be 20 feet away from an entrance and windows. So, no one's telling you can't smoke. Let's just be courteous, 20 feet away from the doors and windows. Think about keeping our work areas clean. Let's look around our cube or our desk. What do we have a lot of? We have a lot of combustible material, right? Paper, maybe some Kleenex, even that carpet. So let's keep our work areas clean. The big thing I'm gonna harp on right now is the space heaters. They emit a lot of energy, and sometimes we overlook and forget to turn them off. But if we leave that space heater on with right next to a stack of papers, what is gonna happen over the weekend, right? That thing's going to get to a combustion point and start on fire. So please, 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 if we do have a space heater, some of us get cold, especially towards, those spring and fall where it's really hot, kind of cold, the temperature fluctuates. Let's really be keen on unplugging our space heater, right? And let's use it in intervals, maybe an hour, turn it off, unplug it, okay? Because they do tend to emit a lot of energy, and that take a look at your office, right? A lot of combustible materials there. Monitor equipment use and maintenance. With the monitor equipment and maintenance, we need to make sure that if we are using extension cords, they're not damaged, they're not frayed, the wires aren't exposed, they're in good working shape. Okay, even though it might be your favorite extension cord or the one you have the best luck with, please, 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 we need to make sure that it's in good working condition. The other thing with the fire prevention that I'll talk about really quick is, especially around the holidays, we tend to use our lights, Christmas trees, decorations, even for Halloween, we want to, get the blow up witch with the cauldron of witch's brew there. All that's energy, right? So please, let's be aware. Let's unplug the lights. Let's be really wary of that. It's just something I see when I do go around different tribes. See a lot of decorations, kind of freak out a little bit because I'm saying, hey, if they leave that overnight or if it gets too hot, that is a big stepping stone or a big thing for a fire. So please, 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 let's just be aware of that. Okay, and so just some key points to remember here. Workplace disasters can strike any time and with very little warning. Emergency response planning can save lives, reduce the number of injuries, and prevent loss of property. Employee training and emergency procedures and special response duties is essential. And you play a crucial role in preparing our organization for workplace disasters and other emergencies. It's up to us, right, to prepare our organization to, make sure we have these plans in place. And the other thing is we have to make sure everybody's aware of these plans. Okay, it might be one thing to have a plan in place with all these beautiful codes. Oh, well, code black is going to lockdown. A code blue is, a medical emergency. Code white is, high winds or tornado. Code red is fire. Well, it'd be really, and a lot of places have these plans in place, but it's not posted. It's not implemented. One spot in particular is our wellness center. They have a pretty good emergency response evacuation plan, but it's not posted. It's not public information. I work out there every day and I ask, hey, if there was code black, I wouldn't know what to do, because it's not posted. I think we should post these plans so everybody's made aware, because they have a pretty cool intercom system. They do call out. And if they do call a code red, I still don't know what to do. So please, 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 if we have those plans in place, let's make sure all of our employees, if we have public, coming into our buildings, let's make sure that they're aware of it. Post those different codes, in public places. Okay, and so that's all I have for you guys today. I know that there are going to be a couple of handouts through the National Safety Council. There's an emergency response plan. It's left blank. Try to fill it out to the best of your ability. And if there's any places you need, help on, let me know. There's my email address there, ngarcia@ameren.com. If you, feel like just, talking to me, there's my cell phone there, 505-205-3419. And I'll be more than happy to, discuss and help and, maybe, give my thought process on that. So thank you. I appreciate it. And give it over to Monica.
Thanks, Natawa. Great information. Really important for all of us to take on. I definitely want to give an opportunity, if anybody's got any questions in the chat, go ahead and put them in and we'll try our best to answer them. And I have a few questions for you too. First, I want to say, I think it's your favorite extension cord. We all have that one thing, whether it's our phone charger and you keep putting tape around it. I imagine as a safety guy, you're pretty, you have strong feelings about throw it away, get a new one.
Oh yeah, no, and I will give you guys a pretty good example. We got a speaker from one of the golf tournaments, and that USB charger was just kind of a generic one. Plugged it in, and within that hour of charging, my hand touched it, and it was hot. So within that hour, first use, just I seen it right there. That little USB charger, was putting out a lot of heat there. And one more thing I'm gonna make a note of on the OSHA requirements is, and it's just something we could strive for, and they make it really easy for us. If we could go to the 1910 general industry, the OSHA requirements there, and it's all online. We could just Google it and get to the specific subpart you want. So say you want 1910 general industry fire protection. You Google that, it'll take you to subpart C. Let's say talks about first aid kits. We'll go to subpart K, and it'll give you, the requirements for OSHA, just the bare minimum requirements. And so that's just something you can take a look at, real easy. You can Google it, boom, boom, boom. You don't have to have, the big giant book here. You guys can't see it that good. It got a green screen, but thank you guys. If we have any other questions, we'll answer them.
Absolutely. Natawa, we at Ameren Critical Infrastructure, we're really into broadband. and making sure the tribes have the best internet that they can get. I'm curious if you think that there should be a section in a disaster plan about what to do if the internet goes out, or anything like that.
Yeah, that is a good one. That is a good question. Just because you think about how our phone system works here, if the internet goes out, we won't be able to make a phone call, right? So it'd be one of those situations to have that landline in place. I know we joked about it, like who the heck still has a landline? But you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Even we go to college campuses, they still have that landline, plugged directly into hardwired into the police department there. And so that could be something we consider. Do we have a panic button? Do we have an emergency button where all, Wi-Fi internet goes out that's hardwired to the police department? That's hardwired, into that EOC.
And then, for folks, I think that many tribes and tribal businesses probably already have disaster plans in place. But for folks who maybe don't have one, where do they start?
Okay, so they could start if you got the quick little handouts we sent. It gives us, the emergency response, who's in charge from the top to bottom, and we can start with something simple as, that fire drill. Let's say fire emergencies. What are we going to do for a fire emergency? And we start doing that. Or we can start on the first aid side. What are we going to do for, a severe cut, or someone drops the coffee pot? What are we going to do for that? So we could just start with little kind of steps, and then slowly the plan will grow. And like we said, when we amend and we change, then it'll just keep getting bigger. We'll just adding on and adding on and adding on. And next thing you know, 3 weeks later, we got a full on plan with different types of scenarios, fire prevention, emergency response, so that's how we would start, is just kind of taking one task, one topic, and growing from there.
And so
we are in Oklahoma. Oops, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so your recommendation is don't feel overwhelmed. Just take it small pieces at a time to get started.
Yes. Yeah. Don't feel like you have to, eat the whole pizza, or eat a slice. Maybe we're a little bit scared of the toppings, so take a bite and say, hey, that's pretty tasty. So we're just going to take little bits, right? Something that we could control, something that we could, have a quick turnaround on. And, let's say if we are in Oklahoma, tornadoes are one of those big events, natural disasters we have. How are we going to do that, right? Is that something we thought of? And every Okie, right, will tell you, oh, you have to take those tornado warnings serious. You have to take them serious. They have, most places have it. If the tornado warning goes off, 2 hours, you have that to get home, get safe. If not, we're going to have to hunker down. So let's just start with something that, we see a lot of, right? Let's say we're in the northern New Mexico tribes. We have a lot of forest there, right? Natural wildfires. Maybe that should be our plan. Hey, if there's a lightning strike that comes and the fire gets here, how are we going to evacuate? Little things like that.
Excellent. Well, what we're going to do is everyone who registered for this webinar, we're going to send you an email with the PowerPoint as well as some helpful checklists to get started on writing your disaster plan. And we want to let you know that our risk control team is available for you. And as well as Amerind Critical Infrastructure, reach out to us at Amerind, and we are here to answer your questions, help you prepare, and be there in the unfortunate circumstances if a disaster does happen. Natwa, any final words?
I think I'm good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time and your attentiveness, and we will get that sent out to you guys. And like I said, if you guys have any other questions or comments, feel free to send me an email, give me a call. I'll be here to answer anything you guys have.
Thanks so much.